Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the station. So, once again, as you're getting quite familiar with, I have myself and Lucy with us as we begin. And is typical with us, it won't be long, and DeSato will be joining us. And I, of course, will step a little bit back in that regard. So, I have some idea about what's going to be shared, and actually, as we do frequently, Lucy and I have been in conversation before we start the session, and there's been some ideas that Lucy has had that are going to become part of this as well. And so, if you want to give me just a moment, we'll we'll get into all this. So we would greet you once again and thank you, express our appreciation as we frequently do for our opportunity to interact with all of you in this way, because of course it adds so much to our exploration of consciousness as your exploration of us does for you. And so, as Chuck mentioned, just prior to our becoming a little bit more a part of the mix, in the conversation with Lucy, there was some wondering about some of the things that we have shared about the direction you are all heading in. And within the concept of simultaneous time, and the idea that many of you may be familiar with, if you have that understanding of things, that where you're heading actually already exists. And the experience that you're having now is the process of, maybe we'll say, opening that up for yourselves. And in that, because it has occurred, then for individuals like ourselves, what are our roles? And more specifically, our role meaning the expression that you're interacting with now, that you would term DeSato. So if you've explored these types of situations before, in other words, individuals that share information, it can be verbally or it can be in written word, through a medium that you've come to know as channeling, will suggest to you that the individuals that come forward within the flow of time, as you understand it, over the past perhaps 80 years or so, show up in your reality as part of how you have all constructed the flow of how you would like to open this up for yourselves. Taking into account, of course, the ideas and the beliefs that were prevalent in especially your mid 1900s and your later 1900s, and then moving now into your new millennium. There were energies that were shared with you through individuals whose energies were colored, shall we say, in those ways of exploring new things. There have been those that have shared energy with you whose energy is strongly colored by the desire to share the depth of who and what you are, the information about that in a way that is, even though it will need to be filtered and colored as it comes into your reality, because you have certain strong ideas about your reality, to share that information in a way that does that in the smallest amount possible, that attempts to keep it as, we'll use this word, pure in that regard. Again, still understanding that it will be filtered as it comes into your dimension. As you've moved deeper into your exploration of yourselves, as you begin to open more doors, begin to peek into the rooms that those doors open into, to see other aspects of yourself, to begin to experience those aspects of yourselves. Our role in that is to remind you of what you have always been. The process that you're in right now and the experience that you will be having is almost as if you're coming back to the beginning when you first began exploring this dimension in terms of a linear flow of time. However, in that exploration, you did it a little bit differently. You have individuals that you've heard called dreamwalkers, maybe elementals, other individuals like this. These are you. They are expressions of you that exist primarily, we'll say, within spirit, but also express themselves within the physical dimension. They are quite malleable within the physical dimension. They are able to do, and this is you we speak of, they are able to do whatever they would like within this. You can change your form at any moment, many things like this. From that state, perhaps we'll say, in again the beginning, you attempted and played with many different permutations of how you wanted this world to express itself. And in fact, there was no one world you were headed towards. You tried many things. You explored many things here, many ways of expressing yourself, many ways of surrounding yourself with other expressions, all to explore this particular dimension. And so what you're doing now is you're moving back into that fullness of understanding, that fullness of expression, but you're doing it from the perspective of a more physicalized expression of yourself. So in this, what our quote unquote role is in part in this is to remind you of yourself, to remind you of your abilities, to remind you of who you naturally are. Because there are and there have been, and this of course is just a part of your process, but there have been many ideas, many concepts, many layers that you have added to your exploration that even though, of course, they were very creative and they were part of your experience here, they can serve to maybe make things a little more complicated than they actually need to be. And so in this, ourselves and individuals like us, as we share information, one of the things that we will offer to you that you will have the opportunity to embrace if you would like to, is to make your journey a little simpler in that regard. There are many ways of looking at your exploration that, of course, are quite fun. They are part of the exploration. But you can sometimes become a little attached to the methods and forget in that your understanding that you are the one that creates the methods because you are the one that creates all that you're experiencing. There's another individual that shares information on your planet, and they use a phrase that we are partial to, and we'll share it now. And you will, as an individual, as a unique individual, you will come to discover for yourself within your expression of your physical expression on this planet what is relevant for you. What is it that flows with how you would like to express your life? There are many ideas that were part of bringing you closer and closer to your understanding of who and what you are. But just like many of the things that were fun to explore when you were very young, and as you moved into 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of age, we could even say clothing in that regard, various types of maybe bicycles or tricycles or things like that that maybe you rode. All these various things that you did, all those are part of your journey. yet they are not part of your journey at this point in time. It doesn't mean they were less than, it means they played a part in bringing you to the experience that you have now in that linear flow way of seeing things anyway. And so this is similar. You've had many things that you've utilized to help you in your exploration, but once you get to a particular place, those are no longer necessary because there is a natural you that understands that it creates all of those models, all of those props, all of those ideas, and then expresses them within this experience. You will know yourself from that perspective. So, ourselves and others like us are here to remind you that all of this information is your information. You've utilized various methods to bring you to this understanding. It's not the methods that were, in the end, important. What's important is that it is your information. It is what you are. So we were going to say in brief, but that probably doesn't express what just happened. But so that then is basically, and you will not only find individuals like us who do these types of things at this moment, there are many flavors, shall we say, of consciousness that are still very much participating in how information is shared because you are very diverse as you explore this particular experience that you're having here on your physical planet. And in that, it is about the uniqueness. So there will be various ways, various models that will be used also. And you will gravitate to those naturally. Something else that we would like to tie into that a little bit and to maybe speak about in a way that we haven't to before, and it in some ways flows from this idea, and that is when you make a choice to do something in your life, regardless of what it is, typically that particular thing that you want to do, you're doing because it holds some importance for you. And so, one of the things that we would like to suggest is that as you make your choices, perhaps pause in the moment and ask yourself, why is it that this particular thing is important to me? And then try to understand what all those various aspects of what it is that makes it important, where they flow from. In that, you can once again take a step a little closer to understanding yourself and why it is you make the choices that you do. And so, again, this has some importance, we'll use that word, because again, in your movement, what it is all of you are doing is moving to the place where you will express your choices freely. They will be choices. They won't be influenced by anything, which can seem strange from the position that you're in right now. But you will make the choices only because you really desire to experience your reality in a particular way. So, in that, what will be important for you will be primarily one thing: your exploration of your experience. That will be, in that regard, using that word, what will be important for you. Leading up to that, shall we say, what you will discover is why now are you making the choices that you're making? What is it that feels important to you about making that particular choice? And that's not to say that you can't make that choice for those reasons or that that's right or wrong. It's that you're aware of why you're making those choices. And so in exploring that, it can help you with your awareness of yourself, your awareness of why you are choosing those things. Because, of course, that is what it's going to be. It's going to be about choosing and choosing for the reasons that you want to choose to do those things. And so today, our process in this is going to be a little bit briefer. And so we will, in this moment, pause and see if there's, on Lucy's side of things, any expansions that you would like to have, any changes in direction, any alterations of things, anything else that you would like.
Well, I really just love everything you've just said. It's so uplifting and it just feels so good as a description of the journey we are on right now. So thank you for that upliftment. You did mention that we've added layers during our exploration that can sometimes complicate things. Probably would be good to touch on a few of those so we can expose those and become clear.
Some of those that, especially many of you that are within this exploration, recognize that you've done with yourselves. And so we'll use these again, not to say that they were bad or wrong. It's just to say that they were a translation of your experience. And this would be the idea of religions by and large, where what you did was you took an idea and you packaged it in a way that at those time periods, and still largely, made sense to you, right? Because again, you're having an experience where you really don't know all of what you are. And so you're in this experience and you're trying to explain this to yourselves. And so in that model, frequently what would happen is that an individual, sometimes a couple, but frequently an individual would step forward who had an experience of themselves where they were connected to, they were aware of their connection of the them that they are, the larger them, in a much more immediate way than most individuals that surrounded them. And they would share information from that vantage point. Now, of course, this happens within the context of the time period that it happens in. This happens within the context of the culture that it occurs in, and even areas within the culture. And so there needs to be language used when this information is shared that makes sense to the individuals that were there. Otherwise, what's being shared will not do what everybody there wants it to do, which is to help them to shift a little bit, to move a little bit, to fold something else into their experience, and to some degree, keep the awareness of what they actually are somewhat in their mind so that they don't get totally surrounded by the experience. Okay. So, in that, then what occurs frequently is that even sometimes when the individuals are still there, other individuals without that connective ability interpret that information and try to make it make sense, try to apply it to the everyday situation that's going on. And then there are guidelines that are applied, and those guidelines become rules after a while, and those rules can become very tight. And so you've layered your exploration in that way amongst others. Now, you've also done this with something that you call science. Science is a way, again, for you to explain what's happening in your reality. Religion was a way for you to try to understand and explain what's happening in your reality in a different way. As you began to focus yourself more into physical reality and take those more spiritual things and put them over here for a little while so you could have that experience, you developed this idea called science. And what you did was you said, if I look out there, how can I explain everything that's happening by the information that I can get out there? Now, at a certain point in your last century, and then flowing more deeply into this century, you began, even from that vantage point, to understand the limitations of that. And so you began to explore what we'll call deeper and deeper and deeper into especially those very, very small things that make up what it is that make up your reality, and understand that things were not necessarily what they seemed to be on the surface, what your eyes were telling you, what your fingers were telling you, things of that nature. And so, again, models that you've used to explain things for yourselves, right? And again, valid experiences, right? Everything is a valid experience. You use these experiences to explore this physical dimension that you're having. However, a part of your exploration is in this moment and has really, in a sense, always been to eventually come to this wider understanding of who and what you are. Now, as you do that, just like with science and just like with religion, as you're spiritual and metaphysical ideas have begun to blossom and have begun to spread, you need to explain those things to yourselves from the places that you're in. And so you name them and you have a feeling about some of these more than others. So you gravitate towards one more than others. And because many of these things have helped certain individuals to move into a deeper understanding, they can become attracted to those methodologies because they have made changes in them. And so and there's nothing wrong with this, of course. They can choose those and say, these are better than those, right? And so, but this is the process that all of you are working through to understand that your experience is just that. It's your experience. Somebody else's experience is just that. It's their experience. It's every bit as valid as your experience is. Eventually, you will come to understand that. You will come to understand the immense diversity of consciousness. And in that, consciousness really does not express anything exactly the same. It expresses all things uniquely. This includes all of you. Even if it's very close, it's still unique. So, in that, even as you move deeper into your exploration, that exploration is going to be defined by ideas and concepts that will be influenced by the existence that you've had so far. And again, that is part of your process. But as you move forward, you open more and more doors. You start to see yourself, you start to see existence with more individuals differently. And as you do that, you change the methods that you use. You change the way that you talk about them. You change your language so you can talk about them differently. You create new things. And so, in this way, this is a process that's been a part of how you explored. And so, these are the type of things that we're speaking of when we make those comments.
Thank you. That was very helpful. I would like to return to the topic of religion as one of the added layers and how it was understood through the language of the time, the culture, etc. If we could turn specifically to the concept of Jesus Christ, expressing something along the lines of, you don't get to the Father but through me. So that's been interpreted metaphysically to mean you enter your attunement with your higher self, the Christ self, through the heart, or through the Christ consciousness. Forgive me, I misspoke that. Christ consciousness is what's bringing you into alignment because it's a place of pure love. How would you interpret that, though? What was the actual meaning if Jesus said something of that nature?
One of the things that we'll suggest that is difficult, becoming less so, but still difficult for many individuals, is to really embrace the concept that you are already all of consciousness. There is no need to get any place. You are there, right? You're expressing yourself intentionally in this particular way. You are this and that at the same time. Our suggestion, our interpretation of that in the moment is, you will get there through me means you will get there through the experience that you're having, the physical experience. And then the understanding of the physical experience becoming more, your awareness growing within the experience. And then through that, an understanding of who and what you are. In essence, this individual was giving you a hint about what you were going to discover about yourselves, what your process was going to be, and how you would once again be aware of yourself or the Father within that process.
Okay. Thank you. So we're already there. We're already fully divine. And it feels like there's a small self aspect of us, whether you call that the ego or something else within the human system, that isn't there. And so it does feel like there's a two-partedness to humans in this experience. So I'm just wondering if you can comment on that a little bit.
So Chuck and Lucy, before we began this process, had a conversation. And in that conversation, one of the things that was discussed was how delicious it is to explore and to become interactive, experience new things. So, as consciousness, if you know yourself as all of what exists, from that perspective, one of the really neat new things that you can do is to have an experience where you don't know any of that about yourself, where you're not connected with all of who and what you are, which is your natural state. From this perspective, your human perspective, as you think about in terms of linear time, growing older, leaving this experience, and that feeling a little anxiety producing to some individuals, maybe even stronger than that, because you don't believe you know that experience. What will that experience be like? We will suggest to you it is exactly the opposite. When you come into this type of an experience, because this experience is so very sequestered experientially from who and what you actually are, where there are none of those borders at all, you are free always to explore all of what you want to. That is the experience that is so very different from what you actually know to be what your existence is. And so moving into this experience is an exploration that is almost, we'll say, a pinnacle type of an exploration for consciousness. You have used your ability to create an experience for yourself that is so totally opposite of what the actuality of your existence is actually about, where you don't know your connection to the rest of you at all sometimes. Now you're aware of it. Every time you go to sleep, you're aware of who and what you are. But while you're within your quote unquote waking existence for many, many, many centuries, most individuals did not pay those aspects of themselves any attention whatsoever. They were very focused on this experience. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the reason why you all chose to have this experience, is to have that kind of an experience. You are, in that regard, explorers, like individuals who left Europe, sailed across the ocean to check out this place that nobody had seen. They had heard a little bit about, but what was it all about? Or the individual who stands on the end of this gigantic jungle and I'm going to the other side. I got no idea what I'm going to meet when I do it, right? Or the individual that walks to the base of the tallest mountain on the planet and goes, I'm going up there. How am I getting there? I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm making that journey. You're those types of individuals, right? You choose to explore situations that are very unlike your normal situation. And so, and you were going to add,
So when we are working with the small self that we have created in order to have this experience, what are messages we can give to the human brain that would be beneficial? Some believe we need to meld the small self into the greater self. Some believe that there's actually no difference between the two, but we've just like created a little minimizer over here. How do you conceive of what is really happening and how we can remove this separation feeling between quote small c? I've already created like the dichotomy, small self, divine self. I recognize it's a fiction, but it's so powerfully palpable when you're in the human form.
most of you, as you live your lives, have various roles. Let's say we'll choose individuals who express themselves with your body type, and we'll say females. Maybe by the time you're in your 20s or 30s, you're a mother. So you have a relationship, and we'll just use a man and a woman in this experience. You have a relationship with a man. You have a relationship with your children. You have a job, perhaps, especially in this day and age, right? You have friends around you. Maybe you're involved in a sport, whatever it might happen to be. So as you are interactive in whatever way that role is, let's say you are in that moment interacting as the relationship you, and you're with your partner, whoever your partner may be, and you are alone someplace and you're interacting in a very intimate way. The other roles that you also play are no longer being expressed in that moment. They are not even part of your mind in that moment, right? You have sequestered yourself from all those other expressions of you as you're in that experience. Yes? You are not at
Yes.
work. You don't feel like you're at work. You're not on your bike, right? You know, those surroundings are not there. You're doing this. You are immersed in this. That is your experience here. You still have all the rest of what you are around you, and you can shift your attention to those parts of you in any moment you want to. That's what you're learning right now, is that you've always been there. The rest of you has always been there. It's just becoming refamiliar with the fact that you are there and becoming refamiliar of how to shift your consciousness, follow it, shall we say, follow it as it moves back into that wider understanding of who and what it is, because that's not what you have been doing. You haven't been allowing yourself to follow it as you have that experience. Because, of course, what you also need to do is to reacquaint yourself with the experience, because you're familiar with this experience and that other experience is expressed in a very different way. So, in terms of your experience, you're seemingly linear, flowing with time. Experience has got a variety of ideas that it's wrapped around. You're going to explore that and do that within those dimensions. You'll expand those as you do that. So that's the concept. Again, those other yous are already there. This is just an expression of you.
Got it. That was beautiful. I have no questions at all. Amazing.
So as we bid you farewell, all of you, as we frequently do, we would just remind you that whatever your exploration is in this particular moment, it's the right exploration in this moment, even if it is very challenging for you, because it provides you with opportunities. And those opportunities in this time and place are to become increasingly familiar with your ability to choose. Now, again, that might not always be an easy thing to do, but that in this time period is the way that all of you want to explore things. And so allow yourselves to choose, allow yourselves to be you, allow yourselves to be unique, and allow yourselves to connect with individuals who support that in you, because that will make it a little bit easier for you. And as we've discussed at various times, and as we know you're aware of, it doesn't need to be overly challenging. There will be challenges there, but it doesn't need to be challenging. You don't need to make it challenging on purpose in that regard. We would wish you well in that regard. And we would say farewell.
Thank you.